Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into something pretty much all of us have dealt with, the deeply nuanced relationship between mobile gaming and academic performance. For the longest time, the whole narrative has just been, gaming equals bad grades. End of story. But honestly, the data tells a wildly more complex story than that. We're going to dig into the research today to uncover not just how gaming affects the brain and our study habits, but more importantly, we're focusing on some really effective learning strategies that both educators and students can use to address these impacts and actually achieve academic success.
To really get into this, we're anchoring our exploration in a super fascinating study conducted over at Teabus Western Academy. The researchers there looked specifically at Bachelor of Science in Accountancy students. And what makes this so cool is that it takes a totally universal conflict, the smartphone in your pocket versus the heavy textbook on your desk, and it studies it within this highly localized, really rigorous academic setting.
So here's our roadmap for today. First, we're going to establish the high-stakes environment these students are living in. Second, we'll break down the gaming behavior spectrum because, spoiler alert, not all gaming is created equal. Third, we'll look at the actual measurable impacts on academic performance. And finally, we'll hit our main focus for today, translating all this data into highly actionable learning strategies.
All right, let's jump right into part one, the high-stakes academic environment.
So, getting a Bachelor of Science in Accountancy is absolutely no walk in the park. The researchers make it a point to highlight that this specific program demands incredible discipline, a ton of responsibility, and sustained focus on some really complex and, let's be honest, sometimes tedious academic activities. To actually succeed here, a student's cognitive endurance has to be top-notch. We're talking long, grueling hours of completely uninterrupted concentration.
And right there is where we find our core conflict. On one side of the ring, you've got this high-stakes demand for extreme academic rigor. And on the exact opposite side, you've got the easily accessible, literally everywhere nature of mobile gaming apps. The smartphone is always just sitting right there, offering this immediate, hyper-stimulating escape from the intense pressure of a demanding degree. It's a massive tug of war for a student's attention. Which brings us to part two, the gaming behavior spectrum. To really understand this, the research breaks gaming behavior down into specific dimensions. It's not just a simple question of, hey, do you play games? It's way deeper. It's about frequency and time spent. It's about genre, because an intense action game engages your brain totally differently than a calm puzzle game. It's about motivation too, like, are you playing to relieve actual stress, or are you just avoiding a tough assignment? And crucially, it looks at a student's self-control and how the game functions socially. Basically, how, why, and when you play matters just as much as what you play. So the takeaway here is that gaming behavior actually has two very distinct faces. Objectively speaking, gaming offers real, tangible benefits. It provides entertainment, genuine stress relief, and studies even show it can enhance certain cognitive skills. But on the flip side, when gaming has heavily relied on or totally unregulated, it leads to some pretty severe negative outcomes. We're talking physical isolation, addiction, neglected responsibilities, and this massive factor called time displacement. That's when those 3 hours you meant to spend studying just sort of vanish into your screen.
Now, let's look at part three, the real-world impacts on academic performance.
The data here presents a really fascinating double-edged sword across 4 key indicators. Take retention, for example. Playing games can actually train your brain to stay alert and sharpen your memory. But excessive gaming replaces study time, which obviously causes massive knowledge gaps. With reasoning, gaming can enhance decision-making, yet gaming addiction actually impairs spatial reasoning. When it comes to participation, gaming can build social confidence, but heavy engagement often leads to literally skipping classes. And finally, conscientiousness. Responsible gamers actually practice good self-discipline, while those who lose control miss their deadlines entirely.
This leads to what I think is the most fascinating paradox in the whole research: working memory boost versus time displacement. Studies actually prove that video games can literally strengthen your working memory through all that multitasking and split-second decision-making. Your brain is highly engaged. But the reality of time displacement completely cancels this out for a lot of students. Think about it. Even if your brain is technically sharper, if you're spending 4 hours tapping away at a mobile game instead of reading your accountancy textbook, your grades are going to drop. Why? Because that vital study time was simply displaced.
And we really have to talk about the conscientiousness factor, which is perfectly captured by that feeling of, okay, just one more round. We've all been there, right? The research specifically measured this. A student's self-control capability, meaning their actual psychological ability to resist playing just one more match, directly correlates to their academic survival. If they lose that internal battle on a regular basis, it leads straight to cramming, sleep deprivation, and failing to turn things in.
So given this incredibly nuanced data, knowing for a fact that gaming has real cognitive benefits, but also massive behavioral risks, the million-dollar question becomes, how do we fix this? How can educators and students manage this dynamic to actually balance digital leisure with academic success?
That brings us to our final and most important section: effective learning strategies.
The research doesn't just point out the problems. It gives us a really clear three-step approach that covers both how students should study and how educators should teach. These strategies involve rigorous schedule management, using repeated review techniques, and a truly fascinating pivot for educators, actually integrating gamified content directly into the curriculum.
So if you are an educator or an administrator tuning in, listen closely to this one. The data suggests that instead of fighting against the appeal of games, you should harness it. Studies highlighted in the research show that incorporating gamified elements directly into your instruction leverages the exact same cognitive engagement that keeps students glued to their phones in the first place. Get this. One experimental group analysis showed that gamification improved knowledge retention to a staggering 92%. I mean, that is huge. It enhances both short-term and long-term memory because that repeated gamified engagement really solidifies understanding. It's an incredibly powerful tool.
Now, for the students out there trying to balance these heavy course loads, your strategies are all about defensive planning. You absolutely must actively manage and block out your study schedules to prevent that time displacement we talked about. And because games can interrupt long-term memory formation, the research highly recommends repeated review strategies. That means consciously studying the same material multiple times over spaced intervals to actively combat those memory gaps. And finally, you have to consciously build your self-control. Honestly, the easiest way to fight that just one more round urge? Physically separate your study environment from your digital temptations. Put the phone in another room. The study's ultimate conclusion really perfectly wraps up our whole journey today. It proves that the goal shouldn't be to demonize or completely eradicate gaming. Let's be real, it's a permanent part of our digital landscape now. Instead, the goal is to fully understand its influence, harness those cognitive benefits where possible through gamified learning, and consciously cultivate the self-discipline that higher education demands. So, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on today. Take a real honest moment to evaluate your own digital habits, or maybe the habits of the students in your classroom. Is your screen time serving as a tool for recovery, relaxation, and cognitive growth, or is it silently displacing your time, your memory, and your true academic potential? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope these insights and strategies empower you to take control of your time and your success. Catch you next time.